Hey, Hotties! Welcome back to the Real Houseguest of North Hollywood. I am your host, Carson Frey. We are here and it's book club. We're going to talk about He's Making You Crazy by the lovely Kristen Doute in honor of the Valley being back. Overall, really, really love this book. Highly, highly recommend. And yeah, this is like sometimes I do the summary because I'm like, you don't want to read this. This, you want to read it. And you don't want to get it from the library. You want to buy it because you'll want to like pass along to your friends. Okay, though, to give you a quick summary before we get into our interview with Grammie, this month's book is Kristen. Now, you probably know Kristen from Vanderpump Rules, The Valley. You know her about messy love triangles, dramatic dinner parties, burning friendships to the ground and lighting them back up. That's how you know. And in a way, this book reads just like that. You know, that is a big part of this book. But He's Making You Crazy is not a Bravo tell all guide. It's memoir, survival guide, confessional booth, like a little bit of everything. So Kristen walks us through her entire romantic history, starting with her first kiss, every single relationship we've seen, the ones we haven't known about. So you literally, every chapter is essentially like a different guy with like stuff being passed on along the way. Um, it goes to the titles really kind of drives into what it's about when love drives you up a wall and you're like, hey, maybe like it's not just them, it might be me too. The best part about this book is like how it's written. So it has like chaotic charm. It feels like very in Kristen's voice, herself, her voice. If you have watched Vanderpump Rules or The Valley, it's reads exactly how you think a Kristen book would sound, but in a really well written way because of her co-writer who also wrote How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. What's especially interesting and well done about the book is Kristen never pretends to be like this perfect heroine. She talks about how it feels to be labeled the crazy one in a relationship and how that label is usually used to dismiss women when their instincts are spot on. She shows us how heartbreak, insecurity, and bad advice from your friends can spiral into behavior you barely recognize. But that's growth, especially at the end of the book. Throughout the book, Kristen sprinkles in these like short, like field guides on like how to handle certain men, like how to handle a love bomber or a guy who thinks he's the victim. They're cheeky and they're fun. Like she's like poking fun of these guys, but they're also like very real. If you've ever dated anyone, you'll see someone you know in there. Like literally each essay or like chapter, I was like, and this is this person, and this is the like you're going to feel it, especially like if you've dated quite a few people like Kristen and I. One of the biggest like themes though of the book is learning to stop blaming the guy and ask yourself, why did I stay? Why did I ignore the red flags? Why did I think I could fix them? Kristen eventually comes to realize her biggest problem wasn't one relationship, it's really the fear of being alone. Overlap to Stassi's book. If you listen to that episode, recommend it. But that vulnerability makes the book, it's not, that vulnerability makes the book more than just like juicy stories. It makes it personal and honest. By the end, Kristen doesn't land in this perfect fairy tale. She wrote this book in 2020, so I all think we know how her 2020 was. She reflects on therapy, self growth, trusting her intuition, big lesson for women. And it's not this like happily ever after, it's more of a to be continued, which is very like refreshing, really. So He's Making You Crazy is messy, funny, occasionally a little like, ah, oh my god, like Kristen, you did that with that guy? Really? He cheated on you and you went back? Again? Again? There's a little bit of that in the book. But I liked that part because it's just so honest. It's very Kristen. It's not this like polished like self-help book. It's relatable. It's you're going through this like ride of like heartbreak, humiliation, healing, and learning to like love yourself and walk away. So overall, very good book. I really, really did enjoy this. He's Making You Crazy by Kristen Doute. And next we're going to jump into my interview with Grammie. Um, as a reminder, everyone, Grammie does not watch Bravo. She has never seen a Bravo show in her life. She knows me, and I know TV, and these books are where we meet in the middle. So here's my interview with my Grammie. Remember to comment saying Grammie's so hot, Grammie's so cute, your grandma's adorable. Oh my god, I wish she was your grandma. Oh my god. All those nice comments for Grammie. Okay. Hi, Grammie. Welcome back to the Real House Guest of North Hollywood for our monthly book club. How are you?
I'm fine, and I enjoyed this book. I have it already here.
Oh, it was a good one. And did you see Kristen commented on the video I made talking about like how we were covering this book? That was cool,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
that
know?
was.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a really good book. So Vanderpump Rules, we've read Stassi's book. Do
Yes,
you remember her?
I
So this is
remember her.
another in our Vanderpump. Now we're dipping our toes in the valley, which is the spinoff of Vanderpump Rules. So overall, what were your like initial reactions, thoughts?
Oh, I just thought it was a fun read. I mean, it brought back some memories of my dating days
Mhm.
before I got married and now since my husband died.
Mhm.
So things are a little changed for me, but it was and I like the way she wrote it. It was full of information, had some really good advice, and I think it would be helpful for young women to read it.
One thing I like is it felt completely in Kristen's voice. And now I've watched her for over 10 years on television and she's continuing. So I feel like I know her voice and it felt so in her voice. And another thing is we talk about, but maybe not on the actual podcast, is the co-writer, the ghostwriter, like that whole element. And I really liked there was no hiding the co-author. You know, it's right there on the cover. And then in the back she talks about, and I also listen to Kristen's podcast, and she's talked about having a co-writer. And I think this co-writer who also wrote How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, she's
Yes.
clearly wonderful, and I liked how they made it like a collaboration, and it felt like that. It felt like Kristen, her truth, her story, her voice told in a really well-written way.
I think they did a wonderful job. They really did. They had to get pretty close, and it sounded like I read the acknowledgement too,
Mhm.
and it sounded like they did get to be pretty close and really a good collaboration.
And I like the acknowledgement of the co-author, unlike some other people we've read, because writing a book is so hard and it's a skill. Writing is a skill, it's a trade. We don't like try to do surgery if we've never been trained in it. So I like acknowledging, like, no, I am not trained in this. I'm an actress and a reality star, so I'm going to bring someone else in. Um,
That was smart.
yeah. So Kristen does write a lot about patterns and relationships and red flags she ignored. Do you think people have always dated like this, or do you think it's like a modern dating thing has made it harder to recognize red flags?
Uh, I don't think because I'm so old that when I was young, I was still brought up to, the man was the one I had to please.
Mhm.
I mean, they had control of the relationship. It wasn't an equal thing like it is now. And so, yeah, back when I was dating, it was my job to make sure he was happy and whatever he wanted.
Which is kind of, I think, how Kristen starts out too. Like when she talks about like her first, like, kiss and that whole thing. And
Oh,
like
that was
she
so
wasn't
funny.
really thinking about like how it made her feel, or if she kind of recognized like she didn't even like the guy. He just had the most status. And that's kinda like, I've noticed that when I was younger, like, I would go after someone for some type of status associated with them, but then it's like all of a sudden you're hanging out with them and you're looking at them, and you're like, "I don't even like you." You
I
know?
know. That's what I dated some that I had no intentions. I know one guy was really upset when I broke up with him, but I was never that serious about him. He was
Mhm.
just somebody to date.
Kristen talks about being the crazy one in relationships. How do women your age feel about being labeled emotional or irrational? Did you ever feel like a pressure to act a certain way to not seem crazy?
Well, yes, I think there is. I mean, I think women have always fought that. We're always, if we demand anything or have any kind of feelings, then it's just women, are you having your period
Yeah.
or that sort of thing.
Emotional, you're emotional.
Yeah, while a man can get emotional and nobody blames him. In fact, sometimes they admire him for being able to show his emotions.
They do praise him. Another thing too with that is like when I feel like I've been called crazy by men, I'm reacting to a behavior from them a lot of
Yes.
the times. Like, a behavior made me like Kristen's boyfriend cheated on her. She walked in on him cheating on her,
Oh, gosh.
and then yet she was made to feel like it was her fault, and she was just crazy and so emotional when he made bad choices. Um,
Exactly. That's
and I
and that's why I think it would be good for young girls or, um, dating age to read this.
Mhm. Yeah, and to learn how to say, "I'm not crazy," like,
Yeah,
and that's just like a dagger men will throw and throw and throw, and you need to be, like, prepared as a woman soldier of this world to, like, "No, I'm not. I'm really not." Um,
exactly.
one thing I liked about this book was how, like, you did see her grow in every chapter. You
Yes,
know? Like, unlike the last one where it kinda skipped around in the timeline where we couldn't see that Garcelle go from A, B to C, we saw her at C, and then B, and then G, like, it was all around. I like that we saw Kristen, like, learn what boundaries are, learn what she wanted, all those things, like, each chapter.
it was. We kind of saw her growth through a group of
Yeah.
different men.
Kristen discusses the role social media plays in dating today. Grammie, how did you stalk your exes before Instagram?
How did I stalk them? Well, you just drive by,
You
you
just
drive
drive
by
by.
wherever they are, or if you heard that they might be with somebody, you look for their car, and we did a lot of
I feel
driving.
the fact how Kristen, before social media, would break into guys' voicemails and then stalk them down that way, like, the way she explained how she would stalk these men, I was like, "She's skilled." Like,
I
this is
thought
a
I
gift.
thought that was so brilliant, and that's my advice to anyone starting to date a guy. Find out his passwords while you're still on good terms. I
The way
thought
she
that
was
was
like
great.
it was so funny, and the way she would talk about how she would break into the girls, like, she would just be like, "Oh, easy, where did you go to high school? I can Google that. Da da da, da da," like, it
Exactly,
was
find out all those things to know.
yeah. She just so well done. I think one thing I liked about the book was it was just such a good mix of, like, humor, but also, like, emotional lows. Like,
Yeah.
the chapter she talks about, her experience with domestic violence, she leaves out, obviously, everyone's name, but as someone who's watched the shows and knows all these people, that's a cast member on the show, and
Oh,
she was abused on camera, and it was edited out of the show, and for a long time, the network and production really kind of hid this man, and earlier this year, he was arrested for domestic violence, and Kristen this year has been talking out, and people have been using that chapter a lot to reference, like, "Hey, this is what happened to her."
wow.
Um, I
I
felt like she struck, like, a good balance, though. Were any moments, like, that felt too silly or too heavy to you?
Yeah, well, I really liked chapter 10. That's where she was raped, and I feel like every parent needs to start teaching their girls it's okay to say no, and it's not your fault if they don't listen to you, and they need to teach their boys, you do not have sex with a woman who's drunk, you don't have sex if she said no. I mean, all
Mhm.
these kinds of things. I think we have to teach both boys and girls those lessons.
I liked how in that chapter she advocated for taking away the word date rape, like it's all rape, you know? And it
Uh-huh.
doesn't make it less violent or less anything because you knew the person. And then she talks about the statistics where you are more likely to be date raped than any other type of like sexual violence
Oh,
because it's
yes.
more often someone you know than someone you don't know. And I think, I, as a little girl, thought rape came from, like, the guy hiding in the trash can in the alley corner, and then you get older and you're like, "No, it's the guy wanting to take me on a date, the guy buying me flowers," all those things, and I think sometimes in media, like, when we see, like, sexual violence play out, like, a lot of times I think it's too much or not enough, and I thought that chapter was really good about that in between of capturing the feeling, the emotion, without it being, like, overly, like, graphic.
True. And that's, I think, out of the book, that was my favorite chapter.
Mhm.
Just because the way she dealt with it, it wasn't too heavy-handed, and I didn't just get too emotional reading it, but it was good advice.
Yeah, and that's one thing about the book is she will have heavier moments, but then let it be funny and silly and be like, "Yeah, I stalked my ex-boyfriend. He." Um, so she ends the book with talking about growing up, choosing herself, learning from her mistake. And when she wrote this book, she was single, and now she's, engaged and pregnant with her first child. How do you think this book will age for her? Like, what do you think Kristen will think about this book when she's, like, 83?
My age,
Yeah.
I think she'll still, like it and appreciate it because I think it has lessons for, well, like, now that I'm dating again,
Mhm.
but not really, because 'cause I'm not looking for a serious relationship, just a more friends with benefit type things.
Mhm.
But, um, it's a universal, you know, men and women are gonna be have some of these same problems, and I think she'll look back on it and say, "Dang, that was a good book. I'm glad I wrote it."
I wonder what advice Kristen would give you about friends with benefits in your 80s, because I feel like she might have advice.
I'd be happy to listen to it because 'cause I'll tell you, after being married for 60 years and be back on the scene, it's a little different.
But, lessons, she goes, like, "Hold on to yourself, stay true to yourself. Don't let, like, anyone else tell you who you are, because you know who you are." I think that's, like, the overall idea or lesson of the book.
Yes,
Um
and I think that's easier for me at my age to feel that way
Mhm.
because, I'm not gonna live with a man. I don't care if I have one or not at this point.
Yeah. I think it's also cool that one day, like, hopefully her daughter will read this and maybe not too soon, but I think it's also a great, like, how cool, like, you get this part of your mom out there and can read, like, where she fucked up and the mistakes she made. And, like, because in a book, you can take things in that you maybe wouldn't want to hear, out loud.
Exactly. I know, none of my kids wanna hear about my
But I do. I
personal
want it
life.
all.
I know, you're good that way.
But what a gift too, she's having a daughter in that sense of
Yes.
like, like, oh, so men haven't been the best to her in her life. So the gift of having a daughter after like wanting to be a parent for so long too. Um, so Kristen often relies on her girlfriends to get through breakups. How important were friendships for you growing up as a young woman? Do you think today women have stronger friendships? Is it different? Is it the same?
I think it was a little different for me because, I got married so young. I
Hmm.
was, what, 19 or I was 20. And, yeah, which is pretty young, and already 3 of my friends were married when I got married.
Yeah.
So, we got married younger, and so you didn't have time to develop those women friendships.
Hmm.
So, I just can't speak to what that would be like. I've never
Which is
had that.
interesting because something I feel like is such a part of you, Grammy, is your friendships. I've always felt like from my point of view as you as my grandmother, you're always someone that had such friendships. Do you feel like that's like a skill you learned more as you got older?
Yes. Yes, it's something I realized the importance of women friendships probably about the time the women's movement started in the
Mm,
'70s, and
so
then
that
that's
kinda
when I
led to
really
that.
began cultivating women friendships.
Interesting. Did, like, the women's movement then, like, teach you, like, "Oh, these are the people that will take care of me?"
Yeah, and because we shared that common bond, and that's when we
Mhm,
began having meetings and get together for coffee, and I appreciated that so much but when I was dating in high school and college, I was more interested in men than or boys,
mhm.
and
Because you were taught, like, "Oh, you have to kind of win that prize," and I feel like Kristen kinda had that too, because she's from the Midwest, all those things, so I felt like she could probably relate in a sense, you know?
yes.
So her journey involves learning to love herself after defining herself through men. Is there like a specific time in your life where you think you stopped living for others' approval, especially men?
Where I thought, what?
You stopped living for others' approval?
Oh, um, I can't remember a specific time, but that's true. I think after I was in my 40s, probably, I got more confident, and particularly after I started working and held
Mhm.
positions in companies that I became more confident about my own.
Kinda similar to Kristen.
Yeah,
If you look at it, because it's really when she's getting into her late 30s, early 40s,
yes,
she's like, "Fuck what these men think." And you can see
exactly.
it reflect. So, that's something to look forward to.
That's true, and that's it now. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna do what I want. So,
Yeah. What advice would you give to Kristen if she were your granddaughter?
oh, wow. Just keep on being the wonderful person she is. I
Aw.
mean, I really do like her. I really wanted to buy a bottle of the wine that she and the other woman
Katie and
developed.
Stassi, yeah. It's expensive. I looked at it.
Yeah, it
It
was
was like
rather expensive, so and I
it was
couldn't
like
find it locally, so
yeah, I would like to try it at some point, but yeah, it's expensive. But I she does have her t-shirt brand, which I'm more interested in those like little cuz I like after reading this book, like when I made the video about it, I was like, I know you can get at the library, but this is a good book to own to like pass around to your friends. Like I'm
it
already loaning it out, like being like, guys, you should read this.
that's what
It's
I
not
think
a
any young like, I want my, youngest granddaughter to read it.
Yeah, I think it would be a great thing for her to read because she's at a perfect like, teenagers, honestly. Because I felt like there's nothing in it inappropriate, but she's, like, saying, "Hold on to yourself. These are the mistakes I've made." But yeah, overall, like, did you have any other thoughts or, like, chapters, anything you wanted to talk about before we start rating it?
Well, when she, the last few pages somewhere, she was giving advice about different things or things she
Mhm.
does, like trying different the crystals and witchcraft
Mhm.
and, which I do remember going through that too.
It felt very, like, LA to me. I was like, "Oh my god, so very LA."
Uh-huh. But I really like what she said about a therapist because I do think it's so important, like she said, to find the right therapist because
Mhm.
sometimes I've known people who've gone to one and they had a bad experience and
And then they
they
never go
quit.
back. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
And
I think I tried so many therapies before I found my therapist, and I've
yeah,
been with her since I was 21, and I'm almost 30, and, like, I feel like
wow. Yeah,
she's my the same way we trust our family doctor, you know?
exactly. And I have a friend who said she wanted to find a therapist who was smarter than she was, who could detect when
Mhm.
she wasn't telling the truth
The truth.
or not being quite fully honest. And I thought
Mhm.
that's a good point too, because it's just like any other profession. You've got the people who are top of their class and the ones at the bottom,
Mhm.
and
And I
different
think it's
personalities.
especially being on a reality show, because I think about the what Stassi said, because Stassi and Kristen were best friends on the how she talked about she slept with her best friend's boyfriend?
Yeah.
Stassi was that best friend.
Oh, really? Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, Ezra, insert that clip here of Stassi slapped her in Vegas Grammy. It was the biggest moment. It was amazing.
Oh, I bet.
Stassi
Wow.
face. But, well, how many olives are you giving this book, Grammy?
Oh, I had to give it 4. Yeah,
Yay!
this was a 4 olive, uh,
Well,
martini today.
I give it 4 olives, so cheers! Woo! Kristen
Cheers.
would be proud.
It was a fun book, and I'm so glad you chose this one.
Me too. Yeah, I wanted a fun read. This was definitely it. I definitely recommend this book. And we will announce our next book club soon. But this was a really fun episode. Thank you for being here, Grammy. Um, have a great day, everyone.
You too. Bye, sweetie.